Hey movie lovers! Today, we're diving into the heart-pounding 2017 thriller Revenge. What happens when a seemingly helpless victim transforms into an unstoppable force of nature? Brace yourself as Jen claws her way back from the brink of death, turning the tables on her tormentors in the most brutal way imaginable. Revenge is the ultimate tale of prey becoming predator, and you won't want to miss a single second of this intense ride. If you're into edge-of-your-seat thrillers with a fierce female lead, you're in for a treat. Subscribe now for more deep dives into the most shocking and satisfying moments in cinema. Let's get started. The film begins with a sweeping shot of a vast desert, its rocky mountains towering majestically against the horizon, a perfect setting for desert hunters. A helicopter soon arrives, carrying a man named Richard and his girlfriend, Jennifer. They are headed to Richard's remote desert house, where they plan to spend some time together before Richard embarks on his annual hunting trip with his friends. As the pilot prepares to depart, he hands Richard a small package of peyote as a welcome gift for his guests. Once inside the house, Richard is greeted by the alluring Jennifer, whose presence seems to embody the desires of any man. The two quickly succumb to their passion, engaging in a heated encounter. Later that day, Richard receives a phone call from a woman, revealing that he is, in fact, married with children. The conversation is smooth, as Richard's wife is under the impression that he's simply headed to the desert for a hunting trip. The following morning, Jennifer, clad only in her underwear, heads to the kitchen for some water. She's startled by the unexpected arrival of Richard's friends, Stan and Dimitri, who have shown up a day earlier than planned. Richard is visibly annoyed by their premature arrival, as he had intended to keep his relationship with Jennifer a secret. Despite his frustration, Richard is forced to let them stay. As the introductions are made, it becomes evident that Stan is particularly captivated by Jennifer's appearance. As night falls, the group gathers by the pool, soaking in the breathtaking desert scenery. Dimitri, occupied with his binoculars, takes an interest in the gift the pilot had given Richard. Richard explains that the item is a powerful hallucinogenic drug, potent enough to incapacitate an entire football team. He recounts a story of someone who, under its influence, sawed off his own leg without feeling any pain. To avoid any disputes over the drug, Richard instructs Jennifer to store it safely. However, Jennifer's curiosity is piqued, and instead of securing it, she hides the narcotic in her necklace. Later, Jennifer steps outside and begins a seductive dance, entertaining the men with her sensual moves. She transforms into the center of attention, particularly for Stan, who is entranced by her and eagerly joins her in the dance. The next day, Jennifer, who has just woken up, is greeted by Stan, who invites her to join him for breakfast. Richard is not at home, giving Stan the opportunity to make a move on Jennifer. However, his attempts are met with cold indifference as Jennifer ignores him and abruptly returns to her room. Undeterred, Stan follows her, trying to engage her further. With a disappointed tone, he asks why Jennifer is avoiding him, especially since he thought she had shown interest in him the night before. Jennifer responds bluntly, telling Stan that he is not her type, particularly due to his short stature. Offended and humiliated, Stan's frustration turns into anger, and he decides to force himself on her, driven by his uncontrollable lust. Terrified, Jennifer can only submit to his assault. Moments later, Dimitri enters the room, but instead of intervening, he silently watches his friend's despicable act. Choosing not to get involved, Dimitri turns on the TV in the other room, increasing the volume to drown out Jennifer's cries. Hours later, Richard returns to the house, sensing something is amiss as he notices the unusually quiet atmosphere. Stan vaguely mentions that there has been a slight problem with Jennifer but doesn't elaborate. When Richard goes to see Jennifer, she tearfully demands that he call the helicopter immediately so she can leave. Realizing what has likely transpired, Richard steps out and angrily scolds his friends, but his reprimand is half-hearted. When Jennifer wakes up again, she insists on going home immediately. Richard tries to placate her, saying that his friends will come and apologize, and even offers her a large sum of money to forget the entire ordeal. However, Jennifer, unable to contain her emotions any longer, threatens to expose their affair to Richard's wife if he doesn't arrange for her immediate departure. Fearing the consequences, Richard's anger boils over, frightening Jennifer into fleeing the house. As she runs, Richard and his friends chase after her. Jennifer's escape comes to a halt when she reaches the edge of a cliff, realizing there's nowhere left to go. Richard and his friends catch up to her, cornering her at the precipice. Richard, in a desperate attempt to regain control, feigns regret and assures her that he will call the pilot to take her home. Calmed by his words, Jennifer momentarily believes her nightmare is over until Richard suddenly pushes her off the cliff. She falls, impaled on a tree as she plunges to her death. Stan and Dimitri are shocked, never expecting Richard to have the nerve to commit such a brutal act. Richard coldly explains that they would all be in danger if they had let Jennifer go, as their actions could lead to a 15-year prison sentence. Moreover, Richard is determined to keep his affair a secret from his wife, no matter the cost. Afterward, Richard and his friends return to the house to retrieve their hunting equipment, planning to come back later to clean up any evidence of the murder before continuing their hunting trip as if nothing had happened. The scene then shifts to Jennifer, who, despite being impaled, is still clinging to life. It's astonishing that she has survived, likely because the tree branch missed her vital organs. As ants begin to swarm her, Jennifer struggles to free herself and notices the lighter she always carries. Gathering every ounce of strength, Jennifer manages to grab the lighter. She uses it to ignite the dry shrub, which breaks, allowing her to escape, though the branch remains lodged in her body. Meanwhile, Richard and his friends are on their way to her location to dispose of her body. Fortunately, Jennifer hears the sound of their approaching vehicle and quickly moves from the spot. Although the branch impaling her makes it excruciatingly difficult to move, she manages to hide just in time. When Richard and his friends arrive and discover that Jennifer is no longer there, they are shocked. They speculate that she was either rescued or managed to escape on her own. Determined to find her, the three men decide to find a way down the cliff to confirm Jennifer's whereabouts. Hearing them leave, Jennifer seizes the opportunity to move farther from the area. However, the path to descend the cliff is long, and by the time the men reach the spot, night has fallen. They're baffled by how Jennifer could have simply vanished. Just then, they discover traces of her blood and immediately follow the trail. The blood trail leads them to a lake, where it suddenly stops, leaving them at a standstill. The men decide to split up to search for Jennifer, but Stan, secretly harboring fear, opts to stay behind in the car, just in case she returns. Meanwhile, Jennifer, despite losing a lot of blood, continues to push forward with whatever strength she has left. From a distance, she hears the sound of a vehicle searching for her. In her panic, she spots Dimitri approaching on a quad bike. Thankfully, he doesn't see her and drives away. Unbeknownst to Dimitri, Jennifer has been hiding underwater, holding her breath to avoid detection. Once she reaches the shore, she notices Dimitri nearby. Seeing that he has left his rifle next to his vehicle, Jennifer seizes the opportunity. Dimitri, realizing he's been caught off guard, tries to calm Jennifer, who is now determined to kill him. However, Dimitri has set a trap, leaving the unloaded rifle as bait. Dimitri quickly informs Richard and Stan of Jennifer's presence, but decides he wants to toy with her first before turning her over. Fortunately, Jennifer manages to grab the knife from Dimitri's pocket. With a swift and desperate move, she stabs Dimitri, killing him and leaving his body in the lake. Jennifer takes Dimitri's equipment and continues her escape. Unfortunately, her journey is cut short when the quad bike runs out of gas, forcing her to continue on foot with the branch still embedded in her stomach. She soon comes across a cave and decides to rest there. Her wounds are severe and difficult to treat, causing her immense pain. As she gazes at the necklace she's wearing, Jennifer suddenly remembers the narcotics she had hidden earlier. Recalling the potent effects of the drug, she consumes it without hesitation, despite its awful taste, hoping it will help her endure the pain. Soon after, Jennifer begins to feel the powerful effects of the hallucinogen. She starts hearing voices and experiencing intense hallucinations. In a semi-conscious state, she prepares to treat her wound. Numb to the pain, Jennifer does the unthinkable. With a knife, she carefully slashes through the skin on her abdomen, her face devoid of any expression of pain. After successfully removing the branch from her stomach, she heats the tin of a drink and presses it against the wound to cauterize it and stop the bleeding. The next day, the scene shifts to Stan, still asleep in the Jeep. Richard, having failed to find Jennifer, throws a dead animal at the vehicle in frustration. At this point, neither of them knows that Dimitri is dead. When Stan wakes up and heads to the lake to wash his face, he is horrified to discover Dimitri's lifeless body emerging from the water. Unlike Richard, Stan keeps his emotions in check, though he silently seethes at the loss of his best friend, assuming Jennifer is responsible for his death. With no other option, they dispose of Dimitri's body in the lake. Richard, furious, lashes out at Stan, blaming him for not accompanying Dimitri earlier. Left with no other choice, the two men leave the area, contemplating their next move to find Jennifer. The scene returns to Jen, who has now recovered from her wounds, though she bears a bird-shaped scar on her stomach from the beer Ken used in her makeshift treatment. Armed with her rifle, she rushes out of the cave, but it turns out to be just another nightmare, induced by the lingering effects of the drugs. As Jen fully regains consciousness, she prepares herself for what's next. This time, she's not running away, she's seeking revenge. The once vulnerable woman has now transformed into a fierce and determined warrior. Fueled by unstoppable rage and armed with a shotgun, Jen begins her hunt for Richard and Stan in the vast desert. Meanwhile, Richard and Stan have found the quad bike Jen had taken and decide to split up to search the area. Richard leaves first, while Stan, still nursing his injured nose, checks his reflection in a mirror. Unbeknownst to him, the reflection gives away his position to Jen. Wasting no time, Jen stealthily follows Stan, despite being barefoot and still injured. After driving around the desert for some time, Stan's car starts to run low on fuel. Seizing the opportunity, Jen takes aim with her weapon, using an 8x scope to zero in on her target. Despite having no experience, she tries to aim for Stan's vital parts. The bullet only grazes Stan's shoulder, causing him to scream in pain. When Jen gets back on her feet, she notices that Stan has vanished. However, she follows the trail of blood he left behind, determined to track down her attacker. Meanwhile, Stan, already wounded, attempts to stop the bleeding by using a sock. Jen continues to follow the blood trail, but it abruptly ends when she finds only his discarded shoe. Hiding nearby, Stan loads his weapon, preparing to ambush Jen. However, the injury to his shoulder makes aiming difficult, and when he finally takes a shot, it only grazes Jen's ear. Startled and injured, Jen runs, while Stan continues firing at her. In the midst of her escape, Jen uses shards of torchlight to slow Stan down. The glass shards prove effective, injuring Stan's feet and leaving him struggling to remove them. Unable to run any longer, Stan limps back to his car to continue the chase. The severe wound in his leg makes it difficult to press the accelerator, but his rage drives him to ignore the pain. In the end, Jen manages to kill the man who had once assaulted her, bringing a brutal end to their deadly game of cat and mouse. After dealing with Stan, Jen hears Richard's voice crackling through Stan's walkie-talkie. Hearing the voice of the man who orchestrated her ordeal fuels her rage even further. Meanwhile, Richard is growing increasingly frustrated, unable to locate Jen and concerned that Stan hasn't shown up at their designated meeting point. Stan's silence on the walkie-talkie only heightens Richard's anxiety. Exhausted and annoyed, Richard decides to head back to his house. Upon arriving home, Richard is visibly stressed by the situation. He realizes that Jen must have killed Stan and now plans to leave the desert by contacting a helicopter pilot to evacuate him. He prepares to leave, cleaning himself up, but is suddenly alerted by a suspicious noise. Despite being completely naked, he checks the house, fearing that Jen has already arrived to kill him. However, he finds nothing unusual inside or outside. Just as Richard begins to relax, the sudden sound of the TV startles him, and his fear becomes a reality. Jen is indeed there, ready to exact her final revenge. Richard is caught off guard as Jen points her shotgun at him, hitting him in the stomach. The two engage in a desperate firefight. Though severely wounded, Richard forces himself to retreat, but Jen relentlessly pursues him. As she approaches a room, she narrowly avoids Richard's trap when she notices the blood dripping from his wound. Richard, now weak from blood loss, desperately tries to stop the bleeding using a food wrapper. But Jen soon finds him, and a tense chase ensues. As Jen runs, the blood-slicked floor causes her to slip, giving Richard a brief advantage. Though weakened, Jen manages to fight back, delivering a final blow by attacking Richard's stomach wound. Seizing the opportunity, she grabs her rifle and fires the fatal shot that ends Richard's life. In the end, the three men who abused and tried to kill Jen meet the fate they deserved. Jen, bloodied but victorious, steps outside, savoring her hard-fought triumph. As she turns around, she hears the distant sound of a helicopter approaching, signaling the end of her brutal ordeal and the beginning of her new life. Revenge is a visceral, adrenaline-pumping ride that keeps you hooked from start to finish. It's a visually striking film that cleverly subverts the male gaze, turning a classic tale of exploitation into one of empowerment and unyielding strength. The film's lead, Matilda Lutz, delivers a standout performance as Jen, a character who refuses to be a victim and instead becomes a symbol of raw, unrelenting vengeance. While the film's violence is not for the faint of heart, it's this intensity that makes Jen's journey all the more cathartic and impactful. Revenge is not just a film about payback, it's a bold statement on survival and justice. If you enjoyed this recap, make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe for more in-depth movie reviews and recaps. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss an update. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Revenge. Did Jen's journey leave you as breathless as it did me? Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next video.